Hi, my name is Natalia and I'm an addict.
Hi, Natalia.
Hi, everybody. My clean date is September 15th, 2003. And so as of whenever this is being recorded, I just celebrated 13 years clean.
Woo!
So,
Last week.
yeah, last week. I don't know where to start. My life is really different today from what my life looked like when I got clean. And it's really important for me to emphasize that the differences on the inside are much more important than the differences on the outside. I mean, there's a lot of differences both inside and outside, but I think that's important to emphasize. I used from age 5 to age 20, and when I say that I started using at age 5, it's not because I'm trying to be so bad. It's because when I got clean, I said that I started using when I was 14, because that was when I started using the drugs that at that time I defined as drugs. And it's important for me to recognize that the things I was using at age 5 are also drugs, so that I don't use those. And I remember being about 8 years old. I don't have a lot of memories of my childhood, but I remember not like everybody talks about not feeling like they fit in. I felt like I was rotting on the inside and everybody could smell it. I was one of those really, really smart kids in the genius extra classes and stuff. And I was too much trouble to hang out with the other smart kids. And I was too smart to hang out with the other trouble kids, but I was I couldn't hang out with anybody. I couldn't hang out with the troublemakers because I was too smart, and I couldn't hang out with the smart kids because I was too much trouble. And so the friends that I had were like the other kids that didn't have friends because they were stinky or killed cats. There was literally a kid that came to school with a dead cat in his backpack, and so we would hang out on recess because we were on the side of the playground that the people who didn't have friends hung out on. And so I remember thinking that it really seemed like everybody else kind of had the instructions to life, and that the things that I did were things that anybody would do in response to the feelings that I had about not really knowing how to do these basic life things like friendships and as I got older, responsibilities and the things that I now think of as spiritual principles, and back then just thought of as the things that good people do. Things like honesty and kindness just really seemed beyond me. I remember being about 8 years old and DARE came to my school with a menu. I don't think they thought of it as a menu. The pamphlet of all the different drugs, and I was like, oh, these things I've been doing, they're apparently called this, and this is what more of them look like. And I don't know if they realized that would have that effect on some of the kids in the room. But like I said, I was using things that when I got clean, I had this idea of what drugs were drugs. I had this really short list of in order to be an addict, you have to use these particular drugs. And none of those drugs were in my list, but I had these other drugs which kind of qualified, but those ones that I used from 5 to 14 didn't qualify at all. And so those were still eligible. And I've heard it said that when we say yet, it stands for you're eligible too. So the things that that list of those 3 drugs that I haven't tried yet, I'm eligible too. When I got clean, it was really hard for me, especially my first time in the rooms, it was really hard for me to internally identify as an addict. I could externally identify as an addict because social acceptability, and that's how you get accepted in this place that people don't tell you to go away, is by saying the words, I am an addict. But I didn't internally identify as an addict because I hadn't used those drugs, and I hadn't used in that manner, and I didn't do that to get my drugs, and I didn't have that happen because of drugs. And And so internally, I didn't identify as an addict, but externally, it was, you know, it was social acceptability. And I feel like I'm jumping all over the place, and that's probably okay. The first time that I was exposed to Narcotics Anonymous, I was 19. I was in jail for a non-drug related offense, which means the word substance wasn't in the statute I violated. And I was in a cell by myself because I wasn't good at human interaction. And there was a vent in the side of the toilet where you could talk to the person in the next cell, and the woman in the toilet vent was telling me that I should tell the judge I was an addict so that I could get out to a program. And I definitely did not believe that I was an addict, and I didn't know what program meant, but she also said, get out. And this just sounded like a really great idea. And once I learned from the public defender what the words program, rehab, recovery, like kind of like the Cliff Notes version of what that meant, I was like, I can do this. And it was this great acting job. I was gonna convince the judge I was an addict. And then I just had to tell the program that I wasn't one and I wouldn't have to do anything. It was gonna be easy because the hard part was gonna be convincing this judge that I was an addict, I who didn't use those drugs or use in that manner. And so like I had to like pretend to be slovenly or something. I don't know. Like it was gonna be hard. And I remember being really confused, 19 years old. I remember being really confused at how easy it was to convince the judge I was an addict and how hard it was to tell the program I wasn't an addict. I remember thinking, this is really backwards and I don't understand what's happening. But I also remember thinking that it's just water. I also remember thinking, when I had gone to a few meetings and stuff eventually, I remember thinking that I must be here to help all those real addicts, that I had been sent to help all those people with an actual problem. And so when I went to my first meeting of Narcotics Anonymous, it was part of this like intake process for an outpatient treatment facility, and there was the steps on the wall, and I remember reading them. And I remember hearing people talking about, in the meeting, they talked about steps and they talked about working steps. And I would read them on the wall and I thought that that was working them. I would just read them really intensely. And, okay. And like I spent like 7 seconds on my first fourth step. It was intense. And so eventually somebody told me that working the steps means you get a sponsor who has worked the steps with a sponsor who worked the steps, and you ask them to show you how to work the steps, and this usually involves writing and other things, and which not always, because like I've worked the steps with a woman who was not literate, and we found alternative ways to do that. So you don't have to be able to read and write to work the steps. Just put that out there. So anyway, I get teary at the littlest things because I have the gift of feelings and human emotion today. So I didn't stay clean from my first time in the rooms, mainly because I didn't internally identify as an addict. I didn't believe that I had the disease of addiction as defined in our literature. I was, stuck at that apparent symptoms kind of phase. And so like when I relapsed for 4 months in 2003, I had heard people say that when you start using after a period of time clean that you pick up where you left off. And physically, I didn't pick up where I left off. Like I did just this once and just this much and just this drug and nothing really bad happened. But what I didn't realize is that mentally I picked up where I left off. The scheming, the plotting, the lying, the rationalizing, the manipulating, the denying, the scheming, the plotting. Did I mention scheming and plotting? And that's the part that picked up where it left off. And I didn't realize that the mental part of my disease, which did pick up where it left off, used the fact that the physical aspects of my disease had not quite yet picked up where they left off to convince me that I didn't have the disease of addiction. So it was like just this once and just this much and just this drug and nothing really bad happened. So like a month later, it was okay to do just this once, just this much, just this drug. And then like 2 weeks later, it was okay to do. And mind you, like when I relapsed, I had a sponsor. I was writing step work, I was going to meetings regularly, and I had a service commitment as a secretary. And none of those things were because I internally believed that I needed an internal change because I suffered from the disease of addiction. Those things were because I wanted to, I had a sponsor because that's like social acceptability. I had probation on my case, I had CPS on my case. I had 2 kids by the time I was 19. I'd been running the streets, hitchhiking around the country. Like when my disease was still fun, what it looked like was standing on the median of the freeway with both thumbs out, and whichever direction I get picked up again is that's which way I'm going. And that's what my disease looked like. And so I feel like I'm all scrambled up again. So I was out for 4 months, and I'm one of those people that took one too many and wasn't coming back. I was like talking to the telephone poles in a friendly manner, and I was just really out there muttering about the aliens and so forth. And I was one of those people that like wasn't coming back. I don't know if you've ever been to one of those meetings where there's like the person wandering around the back of the room drinking 6 cups of coffee and talking to themselves and sharing out a turn. That was me with over a year clean with my shopping cart parked outside. People thought that I didn't have the clean time that I was claiming because I was still so crazy. Sometimes those crazy people that are too crazy to have the clean time they're claiming aren't lying. And, was I not supposed to draw that?
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, and like I was too crazy to work and I was too crazy to go to school, but I wasn't too crazy to be a GSR. And so I got the honor of representing my home group, the Step Study and Area Service. And I remember going to this service workshop because the reason I went is because they were yelling at the woman that was putting it on. They were telling her that nobody's gonna come, we're gonna spend all this money on spaghetti and it's not gonna change anything anyway. And I was like, I'm gonna go. One, I need to learn some things, but also that if I go, they can't tell her nobody came. So I slept in the parking lot outside the facility where that service workshop was going to be held because I was homeless, with a sign on me that said, if you are police, I have a reason to be here, and if you are NA people, please wake me so I can help set up. And they woke me and I helped set up. And there was a couple people that trickled in around spaghetti time, and everybody who was there to present a workshop went to everybody else's workshop, but I was the only non-presenting member that was there all day for every workshop. And I'm still clean, and I'm still in service, and most of the service I do today is geared toward helping other people learn how to do service. And I'm getting goddess bumps. 100% of the people who stayed for that entire workshop that day are still clean and doing service. If we only reach one person. So I stayed really involved in service because I worked my steps. I worked my steps, and because I was like too crazy to do anything. I was homeless. I got one of my kids back while I was homeless, because in California, homelessness is not a reason to remove a child if there's a way to keep the child safe. And so I got one of my kids back, and he came to all the meetings with me, and he came to service with me, and I was so crazy. Like, I would get kicked out of the welfare department. I never understood people that said they spent all their welfare money on drugs. How did they accomplish getting on welfare while they were on drugs? I could not get on welfare clean. But I worked my steps. I'm really grateful that I spent a few years homeless in recovery and just really crazy, because what it gave me was the gift of being able to focus on my step work and being of service and growing and changing on the inside, because that relapse taught me that I did have the disease of addiction, as defined in our literature. And so because I was too crazy to work, I had the gift of being able to work on my step work. And eventually I was able to go back to school when I had 5 years clean, and I'd worked the steps a couple times. And so what I watched is people that would they'd get their class schedule, they'd try to put some meetings in it, they'd end up loaded all mysterious and stuff. So I got my meeting schedule and I put some classes in it. And I'd see people, they'd get their work schedule, they'd try to put some service in there, and they'd end up loaded. And so I got my service schedule, and I put some work hours in there. And like, I learned how to prioritize from watching the mistakes of others, and that's a gift that I've gotten here. And I got to work the steps, and I got to work the steps over and over again. And the things, so I thought that I had, like, this part of my crazy is the disease of addiction, and this part of my crazy is inherently messed up to me. And what I started to hear is people sharing in meetings vulnerably about things that were crazy with them that I had on this list. And I'm like, man, if they can share that in a meeting, maybe it's not just me. Or I'd read about it in the literature, or they'd come back and share the next week with a solution. Or I'd start writing in my step work, and there'd be a question that addressed one of those things. And what I started to understand is like that I don't have to have reservations in my second step. And it had a lot to do with a woman that I was friends with when I had a few years clean, and I knew she was just as crazy as me. And I watched her change. And she talked about how she had to believe that she could be restored to sanity in all areas of her life. And it changed the way I work my steps. There's been a bunch of things that have happened over the years that have changed the way I work my program. And that was one of them. And like, I'm still crazy, but I have some new tools to deal with that. And being in service gave me things like accountability and the ability to show up and the ability to listen and learn when I was uncomfortable and didn't know what was going on. And that's how I became a successful student. And doing service in a capacity where I'm sometimes helping teach others and I'm facilitating has made me a better educator, because today what I do, I'm in my third year of a PhD program studying to be a math professor, and I teach mathematics at a university. And I think about things in the classroom, like what's our primary purpose in this classroom? And I think about things like the third tradition, and like that everybody has a right to be here. I incorporate the traditions into my daily life, and it makes me a better person in my professional life. It makes me a better person in my home life. It makes me a better person in my friendships. I'm not in a romantic relationship right now, but it's not because I feel like I'm too unhealthy to be in one. It's because I know that right now I couldn't take on another service commitment. And so if I know that I don't have the time to devote to another service commitment that might happen once a week or once a month, why do I think I can take on a commitment of a person that might happen multiple times a day? And so I just don't have time for that right now. I'm a single parent in grad school and working, and I do service in Narcotics Anonymous, and I have sponsees, and I'm okay in my skin today. I don't need the validation of another person saying they love me to tell me that I love me today. It's nice to have the women in Narcotics Anonymous telling me they love me. It's sometimes nice to have a man say he loves me. But what I have today is love for myself, because I've worked the steps over and over and developed a relationship with a higher power of my misunderstanding. And what I have today on the inside, this relationship with myself, that like I can sit in non-judgment of my feelings. Like I can experience feelings, and it doesn't mean I'm recovering wrong. If I'm experiencing the feeling anger, it's not because I'm working my program wrong, it's because I'm human and I get to practice things like kindness and compassion and forgiveness, and I can still feel that feeling. I can feel multiple feelings about the same situation. My sponsor says that in our society, ambivalence is discouraged because we're supposed to be decisive. And that what ambivalence can be for me today in the context of my recovery is a temporary willingness to suspend judgment. And having that perspective on my own thoughts is the gift that allows me to accept myself today. Because the mentality that says there's something wrong with my thoughts and feelings is the exact same mentality that led me to put drugs in my body to cover my thoughts and feelings. And the reason I don't have to put anything in my body today is because I'm able to sit in non-judgment of my feelings and my thoughts and just really learn to love myself today for who I am and who I'm becoming. And I don't have to hate the person I used to be to love the person I am today. And I'm a better mother because of it. I'm a better friend because of it. I'm a better sister because of it. I'm a better human being in all of my relationships because of the way that my relationship with myself has changed, because of the way that my relationship with my higher power has changed in these realms. I'm pretty close to time, right? Okay, thank you so much.